Now let's take a closer look at the industry's current strategic landscape.
We've seen a growth in the number of wineries in the United States that's tremendous. In the last 10 years, the number of wineries in the U.S. has increased from 2,000 to over 3,000. In the last 4 years alone in California, during one of the worst economies we've seen in a long time in California, during that 4-year period, the number of wineries has increased 24%.
In the late 1990s, in anticipation of soaring demand during the dot-com boom, California wine growers began planting new vines with abandon. The production of Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon grapes doubled, and Merlot tripled within the decade, making America the 4th largest wine producer in the world. But while America was the 4th largest producer, it remained stuck at 34th place in world per capita wine consumption. At the same time, the US government was approving over 60,000 domestic and foreign labels for the American market every year. Consumers faced a choice of hundreds of different grape varietals and thousands of geographical appellations, and tens of thousands of brands. Overall, the industry is divided into two strategic groups, budget and premium segments. The intense competition in the budget segment has fueled industry consolidation. The top 8 companies in the US produce more than 75% of the wine by volume, while the estimated 2,500 other wineries produce the remaining 25%. In dollar terms, however, the wines produced by the top 8 companies are low-priced wines selling below $7 per bottle. While low-priced wine accounts for 77% of the volume of wine sold, they bring in just 48% of sales. On the other end of the spectrum, the remaining 23% of wine sold above $7 is considered premium and accounts for 52% of sales. For the previous 10 years, sales of budget wine steadily declined as sales of premium wine slowly grew. The dominance of a few key players in the low-priced volume market has given them an ability to leverage distributors to gain shelf space and put millions of dollars into marketing budgets. Small boutique wineries survive, but they must stay small or risk being clobbered by the majors.
Now, the distribution model is really driven by volume and scale, because the distribution is a capital-intensive, labor-intensive system. And as such, the people who own that system want to take advantage of scale, economies of scale.
In the late 1990s, as the wine market consolidated, there was a simultaneous consolidation of retailers and distributors across the United States. The number of distributors have fallen from nearly 5,000 in the 1950s to approximately 250 by 2000. On average, there are only 2 major distributors per state. At the same time, there is also enormous retail consolidation, with the top 10 supermarkets controlling 55% of the US market in 2000. As the bargaining power of distributors rose exponentially against the plethora of winemakers, a juggernaut emerged. While most wine producers focused on low-volume, high-priced wines to gain the maximum rent from their investment, the distribution system increasingly focused on high-volume, low-priced products to maximize their economies of scale.
Well, I especially noticed that there's a huge amount of confusion with French wines. So many people still don't understand the place name difference. The fact that Burgundy, if it's red, is probably going to be Pinot Noir unless it's from Beaujolais, and Côte Rôtie is Syrah. I mean, it's really difficult for them. So I think that with so many options and so many SKUs on the shelf now,
the consumer does want quality or price, one or the other. They've got to get one of them. If you're not competing in one of those arenas, well, you're probably not going to make it.
Some people just assume that because it's expensive, it's better. And I think that that's another worry. And they also assume, and I don't know, maybe it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because a lot of people, if they buy a really expensive bottle of wine, $100 bottle, they're going to like it. They're damn well going to like that, because if they don't, then they feel like they got rooked.
A lot of people are like almost fear wine. You can see people that come into this store, and there's not that many, but some, they're afraid to ask the question because they're afraid to ask the wrong question, and so they never ask it at all. And the same applies in all walks of life. The same applies in a school. You're afraid to sound stupid in the class, so you don't put your hand up, and so then you never know.
With the number of producers and fragmented international markets, it was nearly impossible for a company to establish a dominant position. Retailer and distribution bargaining power was at an all-time high as these spaces were increasingly overcrowded. Weak, poorly run companies are increasingly swept aside. Large wineries are plowing millions of dollars in above-the-line marketing to stand out. Profit margins were starting to be pressured. Despite these challenges, the nobility, glamour, growth rate, and low barriers to entry invited more and more wineries into the U.S. market. Wine is now made in every state of the Union, including Alaska. Foreign winemakers are also increasingly penetrating the U.S. market, looking for new demand outside of their shrinking domestic markets. By 1999, imports accounted for 20% of all wine sales in the U.S.